Every day of my life I can run back to you. You rush back at me with treasures anew. Beauty skims your surface with wild geese and swans. Hawks are overhead, the stilled gray heron. I climb under the bridge where the water lies low, where free fish and minnows swim to and fro, where red carp shimmer in and out.
Richard Forliano is going to speak about the history of the river.
I want to thank Erin for inviting me here today to talk about the history of the Bronx River. I was lucky enough, starting 5 years ago, to work with wonderful people on putting together the book, Out of the Wilderness. And there are really 4 events in the history of Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe that most people aren't aware of that changed the history of our community. 2 of them are the Bronx and the Hutchinson River, the arrival of the railroad in 1844 to Tuckahoe, and the completion of the Bronx River Parkway. Part of my talk has already been stolen. The title of my topic is A River Runs Through. And for thousands of years, this 23-mile-long river, and I just learned today it's the only freshwater river that flows into New York City. The Bronx River has been the key to the communities that run alongside of it. Right now I'm involved in working with the 3 school districts, Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe, to embed local history into their curriculum. And when the young people take 9th grade global studies, they talk about the Nile and Egypt, the Tigris Euphrates, Mesopotamia, Iraq and Syria, the Wangho in China, the Ganges in India. Well, the Bronx River is the river around which Tuckahoe started. There's a signpost in Bronxville saying that the land that was Eastchester was bought from Chief Gramerton in 1666. Actually, that's somewhat off. The area that's Eastchester and Bronxville was bought in 1701. And I want to tell you how much it cost the citizens of Eastchester to buy it from the Native Americans. It took 13 guns, 12 coats, 12 kettles, 2 axes and 2 sets of tools, and 4 barrels of cider. Pretty good deal. That's how we got Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe. During the colonial period, before the American Revolution, there were widely scattered farms. And on those widely scattered farms, they raised livestock and they raised grain. And they would put it in their boats and they would sail it down to the East River to New York City. Along the banks of the Bronx River, mills were built. Now, to show you how slow I was when I was in high school, I didn't know what a mill was. What does a mill do? It grounds wheat into flour, it saws wood, and it performs other functions. And the first name of Bronxville was not Bronxville, it was Underhill's Crossing, named after the mill that ran through what would later become Bronxville. And this was a very happy time in the history of the town of Eastchester. But then something happened. The most devastating event was the American Revolution. There were about 800 people living in Eastchester, which was 2.5 times the size of what it is. And when they returned, after the devastation of the American Revolution, which is a lot like Aleppo or Vietnam during the war or Korea in the DMC, they loved no one and they feared everyone. What saved Eastchester? It was Tuckahoe. It was the War of 1812. And there was a British blockade of textiles and old goods from England. So what did we build along the banks of the Bronx River? The Tuckahoe Textile Company. And that mill is now a restaurant. You always see it there. So it would be, Tuckahoe would become the industrial center of what later would be the present town of Eastchester. And we all know in 1822 that marble was a major industry in Tuckahoe. How did they get the marble to market? Well, these slabs of marble were almost as big as this room. They put it on a cart, they take it up Winter Hill Road, with oxen they would take it down to the Hutchinson River where Mount Vernon would be started years later, and they would float it down to New York City. The most important event, I think, in the whole history of Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe was the arrival of the train in 1844. The New York and Harlem River line was called the Grand Central Railroad because it went to Grand Central. And not only did it allow Tuckahoe marble to be sent all over the country cheaply and in a more efficient manner, but it also brought the immigrants. What was the first immigrant group? It was the Irish, the famine Irish, who started coming in 1846. And within a few decades, unlike New York City, the famine Irish who came here, they had a one-room schoolhouse, they had a church, they had a place to buy a home. And we have people sitting here who are direct relatives of those first Irish who really started our town. And it also brought people from New York City trying to get away from the pollution and the congestion. And then another war hits. It's a civil war. And with progress comes change, and it also creates problems. The Bronx River, and we complain about it today, and I've learned a lot from the previous talk, but if you think it's bad now, just imagine this. When the springtime floods came in from the stables, from the factories, from the tenements along the Bronx River, came raw sewage, which floated up, and in the springtime floods created a terrible stench. But worse than the sewage was the pools that were left over, and mosquitoes would come here, and malaria was a big problem, a huge problem. And not so much here in Tuckahoe, because Tuckahoe's on higher ground, but down in Bronxville, it became a very serious problem until one man got off the train in 1890. His name was William Van Duzer Lawrence. You all heard the name Lawrence, Lawrence Hospital, Sarah Lawrence College, and he had an idea. He was going to create a place for people from New York City where they could escape the congestion and pollution in New York City and live in a place that was for well-established individuals who wanted a better way of life. And that's how, 8 years later, we have the village of Bronxville. And along the banks of the Bronx River, something else was happening. 6 years after Lawrence came in, there was a problem in New York City, down at the Bronx Zoo. The pollution from the Bronx River were killing all the animals. So they set up a commission. 10 years later, in the botanical gardens, all the birds were dying. And in 1906, the Bronx River, and I have the name a little bit off, commission was set up to do two things: to clean up the Bronx River and build a parkway. Now, the Bronx River is America's first parkway. 1925, it's completed. The first public park in Westchester County is the park along the Bronx River. We talk a lot about, we pull our hair out right now, the government isn't working for us, especially on the national and state level. But back when the Bronx River Parkway Commission took place, they said, we're going to apply the principles of good government, and we're going to clean up the Bronx River. and they did clean up the Bronx River. Now, I heard about, you guys already talked about the ice skating that took place, the swimming. I never heard of the bathhouse before. That's really exciting. But you said before that swimming stopped in the Bronx River in the 1930s. Well, there were bad little young men like me. I grew up in Pelham. We went to the Long Island Sound, but I've talked to some of the old timers that would, my age, they would go down as late as the 1960s and swim and fish in the Bronx River. So the Bronx River now has problems. But we have a Bronx River Conservancy that cleans up the Bronx River, and I'm hearing right here today that people are approaching the government and volunteer organizations. But just think about that. The Bronx River is a river that runs through, and it's cyclical, like all our problems. We shouldn't be despondent. We're going to get together. Volunteers have to do it, but we also have to work with government. So it's an exciting time. I think I kept it to 10 minutes, so give me a round of applause for not being too long. I'm sorry. Any questions? Any? Yes?
So what are the headwaters of the Bronx River?
Oh, I didn't mention when it used to start up in Valhalla. And then with the Kensico Dam, that was mostly built with Irish and Italians working together in 1918. So the headwaters are in Valhalla, and they're, and you have the Kensico Dam there now. Any other questions? Oh, thank you.
So my name is Peter McCart. I'm the chair of the Eastchester Environmental Committee. Part of my committee is not here yet with our signs and stuff, but we do have seeds to give out. These are heirloom seeds. Anybody who wants them, they're free to take whatever you want. They're really cool, and you can take those home with you. We're going to have a little bit of display in a moment. But my other hat that I wear, I'm working for the county executive. I'm the assistant to George Latimer in the county executive's office, and I'm working on the environment and sustainability, and I'm going to be the director of energy and sustainability. And there's a recommitment by the county for our parks and our parks department, and for the Bronx River and the Bronx River Conservancy. And I'm proud to announce that we just signed on to the Paris Agreement as a county. It's a big step to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels by 80% by 2050. And we have a measured step to get to that. We are going to be creating an environmental management council. It's going to be made up of one person from each legislative district. So Legislator Amar is going to be picking somebody from our area, and then there will be 10 at large, and then this council will oversee all the other departments and just kind of bring and advise things to the county executive's office. The county executive will also name 10 other people that didn't make that first 17. And then the department heads will also be on this environmental council. So we're also pushing into electric vehicles now. We're purchasing 78 reticulated buses. Those are the large, the accordion-like buses. 78 of those are going to be hybrid electric, plug-in electric. They have a depot mode on them, so when they're in the depot or they're waiting, they go to full electric, so no fumes. Or when they're in the depot or in the garage, they can drive around on electric. They only get a couple miles by pure electric. We're also analyzing, and we have a study that we're working on currently right now. We expect it to be done by the end of the summer on countywide composting. So there's several communities in Westchester, Scarsdale, Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and the town of Greenburgh, who are now doing drop-off food scrap recycling. And other communities are looking into it and doing it as well. And I'm sure that Frank is looking at it here in Tuckahoe. Frank should get up here and speak as well. But our mission on that is to consolidate that and aggregate that in maybe 1 or 2 spots as a transfer station, and in the end, you know, composting on site here in the county. Currently, they're shipping it up to Peekskill. So not Peekskill, Ulster County. Peekskill's in the county. Got a lot of good things that are going on. We reaffirmed our commitment to the Cornell Cooperative Extension. In the past 8 years, there's been a slipping away of that, of the commitment, of financial commitment, and just a organizational commitment. I could go on and on about all the good things that are coming out, but it's good to be here on behalf of County Executive George Latimer. He may show up a little later on. You know how he is. He might be here. But thanks for coming out, everybody. Thanks for doing this. Thank you to Aaron. Thank you so much, Aaron. This is great. This is great. I would like to also introduce Damon Marr, our county legislator for our district here, and he's going to talk about what they're doing too.
Thank you. And what I learned about the new buses is they're twice as fuel efficient, so they're going to start paying for themselves very quickly. Yeah. So yes, I'm Damon Marr. I'm the county legislator just elected for Tuckahoe, Eastchester, and the northern half of New Rochelle. I haven't lived in the northern half of New Rochelle, but I have very fond memories of growing up and visiting my grandmother on West Pondfield Road. So she was Bronxville mailing address, but not in Bronxville. And playing down by the park and the water. So, yeah, we're going to try to do everything we can to clean it up. I'm on the Parks and Recreation Committee at the Board of Legislators. I'm a very active user of the bike path and the running path, going all the way up to Kensico Dam. And we're hoping we can link up a little part of it that between Scarsdale and Hartsdale stations that are not trails at this point. There are plans for doing that. So I'm very pleased to be here and say hello to you all and learn about this fascinating history of all the uses that people were able to make of the river. Recreation uses, not the dumping uses. So thank you for having me. Thank you, Erin. And we will be in touch to talk more about what we can do with the river.
So our next speaker is going to be Frank DeMarco from the Tuckahoe DPW, and yeah.
Welcome everybody. I'm Frank DeMarco, obviously from the Department of Public Works. Many of you know me, see me all over the roads. And sometimes looking like we get run over by a lot of cars that are going by, being in the middle of streets. But welcome everybody, and Erin, thank you. Thank you for having us. We really need more people like Erin to promote the consortiums like this. You know, we really do. And there are a lot more people out there that want to get involved, and I'm trying my hardest. I'm standing up at these meetings and trying to promote things like Erin. That's what Erin is doing now, and what a lot of us are doing in Tuckahoe. We have a lot of volunteers in Tuckahoe. We have, like Elaine is on the Tree and Environmental Committee, and you know that Peter does in Eastchester with his environmental committee, Claire and her husband. There's a lot. There's not a lot of initiatives here in Tuckahoe and Eastchester. I'm representing the Department of Public Works and all we do. Earth Day to me is trying to correct all the damage that was done to the earth over the years and moving forward, making it a better place for everybody. That's Earth Day to me. We try to instill that every day in the Department of Public Works, in everything we do. This is my team at DPW. There's 18 of us. They're highly skilled in what they do, and if you notice, they're all over the place doing a lot of great things in Tuckahoe. We do a lot of public outreach at a lot of events. This is Joe Tavolillo, my mechanic. And what he's doing here is promoting the vegetable oil sanitation truck that we had years ago. Let me just touch on the sanitation truck. When I first started here about 11 years ago, I mentioned to Joe Tavalil that I would like to get our sanitation truck fueling on vegetable oil. It sounds crazy, but it's been done. So what he did is he converted our first truck to run on straight vegetable oil. We were collecting vegetable oil from the restaurants, and Joe was processing the vegetable oil so it could run, so he could purify it so it could run through our trucks. It was so successful in our first truck that he converted our second truck to run on vegetable oil. We did that for about 5 years, and the reason we're not doing it today is because we had to purchase newer trucks, and the newer trucks will not warranty any of their trucks running on vegetable oil. So that's why we're not doing it today. But it went well. I mean, we were saving about $35,000 a year just on fuel, running on straight vegetable oil.
When's the warranty up?
When's the warranty up?
Yeah,
I think
that's what I was getting at.
our warranties are about 5 years a truck. So we have 2 new ones now. And the oldest one is only a year old. But we're doing other things to make up for that, I promise you. LED lighting. This is an LED fixture that's in the streets. We have approximately 500 street lights in the village of Tuckahoe. Right now, presently, 85% have been converted to LED in-house. We did this all ourselves. So we didn't pay another contractor to install these. Trees, we need trees. Could you imagine a world without trees? Every one tree that we take down every year, I try to plant 4. And what's most important today is that now we're planting trees, proper trees in the proper locations. You know, if you look under some of these high-powered wires and these trees are being trimmed beyond really recognition. So we're no longer doing that. We're putting proper trees in proper places. This is a bioswale. This is on Jackson Avenue. And what this does is rainwater comes down Jackson Avenue and goes into this little area. So it's twofold. What it's doing is feeding the vegetation with water, but it's also working through the soil and filtering the water that's coming down the hill before it goes to our waterway. So we have a couple of these projects that we've implemented in Tuckahoe, and they really work great. It's very simple, it's appealing, and aesthetically pleasing. When this is grown during the spring and summer months, it looks really beautiful. This is our sanitation truck that was fueled on vegetable oil. And you can tell how happy the individuals were to drive it. Well, they say when it goes by, it smells like French fries sometimes. I don't know. I've never smelled that. This is Joe, our mechanic again. He's processing the vegetable oil that we were collecting from restaurants every Thursday, local restaurants. This is our DPW facility. And the reason I show this is because we have a few initiatives that we've implemented at our DPW yard. To the right of the building, we have these cisterns that collect rainwater. When it rains, it runs off the roof into the, I'll show them, the pictures will be coming up. There they go. The rainwater runs off to the roof into these cisterns. We collect rainwater. And what this does, it waters and irrigates our vegetation at the yard. All right, so it's not using your drinking water. We're collecting the rainwater for irrigation. To the right side, I don't have a picture, to the right side of the building, there's rainwater collected to actually water our native vegetation there. So that's over to the left side. And what we also have in between is we have our stormwater separator. So when it rains, all the water that goes into the stormwater separator, it's actually filtered. It collects, it's just a mechanical separator. And what it does, it separates particle matter and oils before it goes out into our waterway. So we're implementing a lot of that in our newer projects here in Tuckahoe. Composting. We share a compost facility in Eastchester with Bronxville, Eastchester, and ourselves. So a lot of your garden waste you think gets thrown out, it doesn't. It goes to composting. And we use the compost throughout our village. And I'm sure the town does, and I'm sure Bronxville does also. These are the interns that we had from Eastchester last year. I usually have 3 interns every year, and I give them little projects to work on. And this just happened to be one of them. So we happened to be at the compost facility, and I took a picture with them there. But this compost gets turned over every day, sometimes a couple of times a day, which is part of its process. What we also do at DPW in Tuckahoe, we collect furniture for the needy. A lot of people don't know that. So when you put furniture out that might be used by another family, don't throw it out, give us a call. Historically, we would throw that out because someone's garbage is someone else's treasure. So if it's usable furniture, Furniture Share House collects it from us. We have a container in the yard. Furniture Share House comes and picks it up when we call them. My men took a tour of this facility, which is the Westchester, it's a hangar at the Westchester Airport. I wanted my men to see the families that were coming in to choose their furniture. These are fire victims, mothers that are left with children that don't have furniture and need to start a new beginning. So to see some of these families walking through picking furniture, it's amazing how you can catch a tear from one of their eyes as they're walking around. So when they see furniture being left out, I wanted them to associate that furniture with a family in need. And I felt that by having them go up there and take a tour and seeing the process, it really became heartfelt. And this was just 2 weeks ago. And that's Kate Biello here, and she's the one that had organized it right here. She did this all on her own. That's her walking around, showing the men the type of furniture we collect. Roadway. This is really a nothing picture, right? But what I wanted to do is just show, and I wanted to explain, that's a road. That road needs to be paved. What we are presently working on is paving roads with recycled products. We're looking at taking plastics that are broken down instead of asphalt and rock and using it to pave roads. So this is up and coming, it's a new thing now, and I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So we're trying to stay away from blacktop roads and trying to use a lot of the recyclable materials out there today. This is another example of recyclable product. The park benches, this is on circuit. This is all made out of recyclable plastics. And these are the type of materials that we're using and implementing them in our parks. Fisher Avenue parking lot is a perfect example. There's a lot of initiatives that have been incorporated in this parking lot alone. And thanks to Elaine, who let us receive a $400,000 grant to make this possible. Elaine wrote our grant that made this possible. This parking lot is very unique, and the reason it's unique is because we've tried to incorporate every sustainable initiative in this park. This pavement looks like regular blacktop when you go into it. But I want you to go down here when it's a heavy, heavy rainfall. You won't see any water running anywhere. It's going to perpetrate into the ground. It's going to perk into the ground. This is porous pavement. And what it does, it goes through a series of filtration processes. It goes through a series of gravel layers, then a fabric layer, and then it gets pumped over to a stormwater separator that I mentioned earlier, and it further gets processed, and the contaminants and the oils also get separated before it goes out to the Bronx River. Everything that's done here is to protect the water before it goes out into our waterway, and that's most important. A lot of these parking lots, garages, there's a lot of contaminants that sit on the surface. There's oils from the cars, the rubbers, transmission fluid, and anything that gets spilled over into the parking lot, if you think about it, goes into our waterway. We're protecting that. We're not allowing that to happen. Underground, as you can see the manhole covers, there's an enormous tank. And this is the tank that I was explaining earlier that separates all the contaminants before it allows the water to go out to our waterway, which is the Bronx River. This gets cleaned out every 6 months. We actually get a truck in here, he pumps out all the contaminants and processes everything so we can have a clean tank moving forward. And it gets done every 6 months. We have a vehicle charging station, the first in Tuckahoe. Also, in this parking lot. There's a grid that once you get a charging station, and we use charge points, so once you get on that grid, it posts any charging stations that are throughout Westchester County or any vicinity that you're going to be traveling to. That's very important for an electrical charging vehicle, because if you have an electrical charging vehicle, you can't just pull into a gas station and fuel up. You need to find locations like this where you can plug and charge. And we're hoping that we could build commerce in doing this too, so people can plug, charge, and shop, which is important. And that's what's been happening. This is only maybe 3 years old, but it's really building up, so people are beginning to know about this. This is on the north end of Tuckahoe. We're also working on implementing this on the south end of Tuckahoe, which is around this vicinity right here. I'm going to go into stormwater management now. And each one of our catch basins that the water flows into throughout Tuckahoe has this little emblem on top. And the emblem has a number identifying that catch basin. And it also tells people that that water is going to go into our waterway, which is the Bronx River. So we're trying to identify what this service is and what it does and where it's going to go. This is the final outcome of our waterway. This goes out to the Bronx River. This is called an outfall. We have several of these outfalls along the Bronx River that I monitor annually. And all it is a big pipe that allows all that water to travel from the catch basin to the Bronx River. I have to inspect it to make sure there's not smoke coming out of it or acid-looking material that's building up. But as you can tell, this is, I think, a 200-year-old tree that's been growing around this. So it's an interesting picture. I wanted to take this. This is part of what Everett's going to do tomorrow. I wanted to take a picture. After this last storm, it's amazing how much filth and garbage had been built up. And don't forget, this travels from way up north, you know, from White Plains up on down. We're collecting everybody's garbage down here and following into the Bronx. This is interesting. Nancy Ray Garris, the Environmental Committee, also had worked on this for me. And what I wanted to do, remember I showed you the emblem that's on top of the catch basin? It has a number. What that number does is identify where that catch basin is going to take that water. Remember I said we have 7 of those pipes that lead to the Bronx River? If you notice, each one of these areas are colored with different colors, red, yellow, pink, purple. It tells me which outfall, if there's ever a spill, say an oil spill, or a dangerous situation where we need to block it off before it reaches our waterway, I can now do that. If someone says to me that catch basin 351, we have a major spill in front of it, I can now go down to the Bronx River, to the proper outfall, have this big inflatable tube, stick it in that hole, inflate it, and now we've contained anything that might have been hazardous or cause harm to our waterway. So we've done all this in-house. This is very unique. No one has done this yet. But this is also a great feature for the fire department also and the police department. So within the next couple of months, we're just going to update our system and work with those 2 departments in case there's ever an issue. Salt storage. You know, salt needs to be contained. If we get water running off onto the salt, that salt is going to run into our waterways. This is what our salt bin at DPW used to look like until this year. And that's what it looks like now. We were able to contain it, put a canopy over it, protecting the salt from the environment, and also protecting the salt from running into our waterways. We did all this in-house. My men from DPW have done all this work. As I go on and on and on. And what does that ultimately do? It saves the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it's important for them too, because I give them a sense of pride. They love working together. Believe it or not, they love working on projects like this because they walk away from it saying that we did this. And there's no other way of really instilling pride in a person than having them be a part of something. Fisher Avenue Park. If everybody remembers what this used to look like, Nothing grew on the Fisher Avenue Park. No matter what we planted, it wouldn't take. But it looked barren until we had these two involved from the Audubon Society, Elaine, Ginger, and everybody from the Street Committee, Environmental Committee, Donald. I didn't see Donald there. But these are all volunteers that made this happen. The Audubon Society gave us $2,500 grant to get it started. And we went out and purchased native vegetation. Native vegetation is the only vegetation that would work here because this is where the quarry is. And the reason nothing grew here is the quarry had a high content of lime and it wouldn't allow for plants to grow. But we didn't realize that native vegetation grew well there. So that's what we did. That's what they did. We helped.
That's what it looks like now.
That's what it looks like now. If you ever get a chance, please walk through this. You know, it's amazing, especially when everything is blooming and flowering. It's just an amazing sight. Very tranquil. We have benches located within it. You can sit, read, have a cup of coffee, whatever you like to do. It's all there for you. This is what it looked like before. Very barren looking. And again, nothing would grow. As we were building, we created a little waterway that would lead natural water to vegetation or back into the quarry, which is right behind the fence there. This is us helping with the mulch in preparation for the planting. We put a perimeter fence, a ranch fence around the entire property. Curbing, we just stressed it up a little bit because the flowers there and the vegetation looked so beautiful, but we just had to really add a little feature to it. This is the sprinkler system that's actually watering it in the morning, and that's what it looks like now. But some of the projects that we're working on also, I like to take the water that irrigates the system from the quarry. So these are some of the things that I'm working on. And what we'll do is we'll pump the water up, filter it, and use it for irrigation. This is the perimeter that's being fenced. And that's what it looks like now. This is what it's all about. I do this for my family and kids. And I do it for all your family and kids. So this is why we need to do what Erin is doing today, is volunteer our services for the better part of the world. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Composting that Peter was talking about.
We're working on this together. We are working on household composting, and that's one of our next biggest accomplishments. Yeah.
Great.
Also, you know, I noticed that Sandy Ray Garris had walked in.
Yes.
I just want to acknowledge her help with everything we've done here. Also, with the rest of the other committees. She's been very instrumental in helping us with the GIS, all the GIS information within Tuckahoe, and again, with all the others that have helped out. And I want to thank you.
I'm very pleased to announce that Frank has been named to the Soil and Water Conservation District Board by the county executive. And yeah, this is a state-mandated commission, and we had one vacancy, and I couldn't think of anybody better than Frank DeMarco to take that position. So he's going to add a lot, and an element of, you know, the municipal, you know, projects and things that you've done, and it's a substantive commission. It's your first meeting, you know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. My first meeting was just 3 weeks ago, and yeah, I'm looking forward to spending
Another one next Friday.
Thank you.
Could you explain the difference with the sewage, the water that goes for sewage versus the stormwater? Stormwater is rainwater that goes into the Bronx River. What happens to the household?
Goes to the office.
You know what I mean?
No, I'm only joking.
Oh.
Yeah, I repeat here, I stand up and I give my MS4.
The question, nobody could hear the question.
The question is, Does household sewage travel in the same location as stormwater? Do they share the same main along our roadway? Absolutely not. The two should never meet. Household waste, which is your toilet, your sink, your shower water, that goes through a sewage treatment plant. And for us, that location is downtown Yonkers. All right, anything that goes into our storm system needs to go into our waterway. That's why we need to protect it. All right, so we have those two main lines running down every one of our roads. They should never meet, just so you know that. And again, if you ever see anybody throwing anything into our catch bases, please just tell me. Just tell me. I'll make it right, one way or another. Yes, I'm sorry.
The governments of Eastchester and Bronxville, are the DPW, are they in touch with you about doing a similar type of activities?
You know, we do correspond to each other quite a bit. Do we share services? We share a lot of services. Yeah, we basically do. We do a lot of this together. Is that what you're asking?
Well, the kind of projects that you're doing with the stormwater, is Eastchester and Bronxville doing this? Are they moving in that direction, or are they more on their own?
The question is Eastchester, Bronxville doing the same thing we're doing? You know, it's becoming really a mandate that we do what we're doing today. More municipalities, more so than ever, need to make all these sustainable initiatives in their development. Yeah, so a lot of them are going forward with this. And we are getting grant money in doing this, which makes it even more feasible for us to complete these projects.
How did the village fare during the storms? Did we lose many trees?
Excuse me?
Did we lose many trees during the storms?
Did we lose many trees during the storm? No. We're pretty proactive in keeping our trees pruned, taking down any trees that are dangerous. I'm not a tree hugger, I'm a tree lover. There's a difference. You know, a tree hugger will keep a tree up no matter what. A tree lover just makes it safe for everybody that lives in his community. Like I said, every one that we take down, I put 3 or 4 others up. So we do try to remain proactive. Yeah, we fared well this past couple of storms. I think we've only had 1 tree down, and that was in front of Village Hall. You know, so other than that, we had a lot of limbs that came down, but nothing that was dangerous. Yes?
So I have a question for the audience. I just thought of, because we're again, from the perspective of the county legislature, we're talking about plastic bags, which are a major polluter. They look terrible when they get up in trees. You don't want them in the river. You know, when they get out to sea, they degrade into these little pellets that get into the fish that you're going to eat. So there's going to be a bill that is going to ban plastic bags from CVS stores and grocery stores and that sort of thing, and encourage you to use reusable bags. There would still be paper bags, but you may be charged for paper bags, or you may get a rebate for using the reusable cloth bags, polyester bags, so there's less pollution. What do folks think about that? Good idea?
Yes.
Yeah. The idea is fantastic.
I mean, even just the attitude. We were recently in Colorado. When you go into a store, and they don't just put yourself in a bag. They ask you first, do you want a bag? Do you need a bag?
Good.
And just that consciousness helps reduce what you get.
Fantastic. Good. Yeah.
I live in Larchmont, and we've got a local van, and it's working fine.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, we can do it.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
I'm sorry, another question?
I just wanted to, she needs the mic, make an announcement.
Everybody, this is Sandy Ray Garrett.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Earth Week. The past, and Arbor Day is coming up on Friday, and I just wanted to make an announcement on this, well, not this Saturday, May 5th. The tree committee, along with Frank's group, supported by Frank's group and actually sponsored by DPW, is doing some supplemental planting down at the Audubon Garden that Frank was presenting before. Each year, DPW, the Bronx River actually started this garden. Did you say that in your presentation? Yeah. They started the planting. They gave us, you know, some money to start the planting there, and for the past 5 or 6 years, we've been supplementing bit by bit, so that garden is growing, fortunately. And every time we go down there, we see people who love and enjoy it, and I'm sure Frank mentioned, and Claire may have mentioned, that it's all about the Audubon. We're using native plants. And it's all about kind of like backyard conservation with plants and habitat that is good for the wildlife. So we are planting May 5th at 9:30. If anyone wants to come and join us, we got plants from the Native Plant Center. Again, all native plants that are wildlife friendly and create wildlife habitat. And we'd love to see everyone and anyone who would want to come out and enjoy the day and enjoy a little bit of community gathering. We would very much welcome. What was the other thing that you wanted? Oh, yes. Last fall, again, DPW sponsored, we planted tulips down at the World War I monument. I keep on forgetting. And my husband, after we planted it, my husband came back and he said, well, oh, what'd you do? You know, and it says, well, you have to wait, you have to wait, you have to wait. And all this spring I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally, we're seeing a little bit of color, and it is so exciting. It looks so beautiful. The daffodils and the crocus that are also coming up a little bit harder, I think. But it's something really to look forward to, and it's really looking beautiful, so enjoy. Thank you.
Hi everybody, Jeff Zuckerman. I am treasurer of the Bronx River Sound Shore Audubon Society. I'm married to Claire Gorman, another conservationist. I just want to say something. We're so blessed here in Tuckahoe to have people like Frank. I really don't want you to think, I mean, it's great wherever you're from. I don't want you to think that there's a Frank in every community in Westchester County. No. There isn't. And there isn't, Claire and I, we monitor bluebird boxes. So one thing we do at the Audubon Society is we brought back the bluebird to Westchester County. 10, 15 years ago, there were not one bluebird that could be seen in lower Westchester County, not one. And it's the state bird of New York, and it's one of the most beautiful birds in the world. So we started putting up, our Audubon Society, we started putting up bluebird boxes on every golf course and cemetery in Westchester County, because bluebirds love a lot of open space. And last year, 2 years ago, we raised 300 new fledglings of bluebirds in lower Westchester County. You go upstate, you can see them. We spend the whole winter in South Carolina. There's thousands of bluebirds all around. They're just not in lower Westchester County, because we built everywhere that bluebirds love. They love dead trees, and we built everywhere that they would normally nest. So they need boxes. But the point I want to get to is that one of the golf courses we go to, which is Bonniebriar, we monitor bluebird boxes there. There's a golf course superintendent that we wrote an article on in our most recent newsletter that came out a couple of months ago. This guy, Nick, he runs an entire private golf course and doesn't use one pesticide. Doesn't use one thing that you would be unhappy to use in your own yard. An entire golf course. They used to use town drinking water over there in Mamaroneck. They used to use town water and buy it, the golf course, and now they divert sheldrake water that would have just been released, too much water into the sound. And now they divert it, so they no longer pay $200,000 a year for water at the golf course that they were just using and wasting. And now it's water that was going to waste to begin with, and they're irrigating the entire golf course with. My whole point is, look, it was 1970, April 22nd, 1970. I was 20 years old, you kids in here, and I went to the first Earth Day celebration in New York City. There were hundreds of thousands of people in New York and Philadelphia and Washington, and Colorado and San Francisco, hundreds of thousands. I'm not sure it'll be that big tomorrow, unfortunately, because the world has changed. But we were very excited 48 years ago, and I'm hoping that rooms like this get us very excited again. I don't want to get into politically what's happening with the environment, but all I can say is that there isn't the same passion that there was 48 years ago for the environment, except for small groups of people like this. I would hope it'll get bigger again. But thanks to people like Frank and people like this other guy at the golf course and people that are taking big steps to do things in their towns and golf courses and villages, hopefully things will be great. And this committee here that brought back this park, there's some great stuff going on, and you're all invited to join in. Thank you.
And thank you, Frank, and thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Jeff. Actually, just to go along with that, tomorrow from 10 to 1 at the Parkway Oval Park is going to be a cleanup, and the Tuckahoe DPW is very generously providing bags and gloves so that we can clean up the river. So I think that deserves a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Donald. Oh, at the top of the hill, like at the entrance of the park, the intersection of Bronx Street and Lake Avenue. Yeah, like right near Claire's house. Yeah. Yeah.
And is there going to be vine cutting too?
So, some people are bringing their own clippers to do vine cutting, and they're more than welcome to do vine cutting if they so choose to do so. There are some scouts that are bringing their own clippers. I don't know, Ginger, were you saying it? So if people want to bring their own equipment to do vine cutting, they're more than welcome to. And then they could just, you know, make piles, and we can discuss it tomorrow. But yeah, if you want to do that, you can. And now I just want to introduce a very special person to me. She was my professor at Manhattanville, and without taking her class, I wouldn't be standing here today. So I just want to introduce Beth Radow.
I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I am so proud of Erin. We also have Pam Haas here, a professor of sustainability action at Manhattanville College. And this didn't just happen. I think you can see it's something that evolves over time. It comes with tremendous passion. And I would say that there is a lot of passion for future generations. I think that we can feel secure about that. I'm a neighbor. I live in the town of Mamaroneck, and we are one of the towns that started food composting, and I'd be happy to share the information. It began, actually, I've been talking to George Latimer about this for a very long time. I'm active in the League of Women Voters. I chair the Committee on Energy, Agriculture, and the Environment for the New York State League, and I'm on our Sustainability Collaborative in Mamaroneck. We've got Nancy Seligson, who's our town supervisor, and Steve Altieri, who is our town administrator. And we've begun by voluntary drop-off. We were inspired by the village of Scarsdale, and we have had a tremendous turnout this year. I think the goal is to see whether or not we can have curbside pickup, but it takes time. You know, our relationship to how we have sanitation is something that is very special. We have pickup a couple of times a week, and I think the economics require that people sort of get on board. But in terms of climate change and the environment, something to keep in mind is that food waste is the third largest contributor to global warming. And if you think about that in the same breath, that 1 in 5 people in Westchester County is food insecure. And so we are throwing away a lot of our food. If we pull it out of the waste stream, and think about this, food is mostly moisture. In Westchester County, we're burning we're burning moist refuse. So by pulling it out of the waste stream and recycling it into compost, we can enrich the soil, we can make our food more nutritious, and at the same time save a lot of money. So we're happy, we'd be happy to speak about what we're doing. I want to invite everyone here to a forum that we're going to have at White Plains Library on September 8th. I've got the executive director of Feeding Westchester, which is the major food bank in Westchester that provides food to our food banks around the county. And we're going to be looking at state legislation and maybe even potentially county legislation that will encourage our supermarkets not to throw away the food, but to be transporting it to help feed us. You know, we may have a perception that people who are food insecure are people who don't work. Well, actually, it could be me. I mean, it could be anybody who might be a paycheck away from not working again. And, you know, in a county as sort of devoted to one another as Westchester, and as wealthy as we are, personally, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that everybody is well nourished, that we devote ourselves to the environment, and it's something that we can all do together. So I hope that you will turn out, and I'd again like a round of applause for Erin, because I think she's inspiring us all. One more thing, we have rain barrels that we got at cost in Mamaroneck. I don't know, it might be something that you might think about here for residents. I think you can get them for $80 or $90, and we made them available at our town center. And people have the rain barrels in their own yard, and then they don't necessarily have to use the municipal water. So it might be something that you can think of. They have a cap on them, so you divert the mosquitoes. Anyway, let me pass this along.
Thank you very much. This is my grandmother next to me, who is a lifelong Tuckahoe resident. And she is going to read a memoir that she wrote about the Bronx River. Her name is Elaine Pagaroli.
Elaine McComb Pagaroli. I just feel very blessed that my house has been in my family for 5 generations. My grandparents, at the turn of the century, purchased a house that was on Parkway Oval property. They came from Bohemia, which is a Czech Republic, and had the house moved by horses to its present location on River Street. My mother was about 4 years old. So we have a long history with living by the river, and we all love it. I married a beautiful man, Guy Pagaroli. He came with me to this house, and he loved the river too, the Parkway Oval. So we all have a long, wonderful history with the river, and I'm so proud of Erin too today, continuing our love for it in my family. And anyway, I belong to the Tuckahoe Library memoir class, and I wrote this a few years ago. Erin typed it up for me, and she always loved it, so she asked me to read it. So I'm reading it. My secret place. Every once in a while, God gives us a glimpse of the divine. We can feel it deep within and realize it is a very special gift. Sometimes it is simply an old cherished memory. For me, it is a golden memory from my childhood of an enchanting secret place that seemed to belong only to me. Living on River Street, my house in close proximity to the Bronx River, was like having a child's paradise right in my own backyard. I can still remember the thrill of summer mornings when I would take the path through the woods that abutted my house to the Parkway Oval, where the council would lead us in fun-filled activities every day. Through the tranquil woods beside this beloved, timeless river, it was the wonderful walk along the way that was truly magical. The path itself was well worn, and the stately trees and scattered shrubs surrounding it were both protective and welcoming. Though mostly shaded, it felt illuminated, especially when I passed a vibrant patch of violets along the way. It was like striking gold. Nearby was my favorite old boulder stone, which was the size of a small table. It would always beckon to me until I noticed the ominous shiny leaves of poison ivy clinging to it and staking its claim. As a child of the woods, I had learned early on of the perils of this terrible plant and would reluctantly back off, leaving my familiar old friend that I dearly wanted to climb upon to these greedy claws of nature and continue along the path. I would soon encounter the hilltop overlooking the swimming hole, so dearly treasured by the boys. They called it the B, short for BAB, which translated into Bear, I'll say Arm Beach. A shocking revelation, I agree, but vulgar language aside, it was a truly charming sight, and whenever I ventured there alone, I was always transfixed by its quiet beauty. It had a natural sandy beach, dotted with assorted stones and boulders, while across the river, which was no wider than 40 feet, a large weeping willow tree guarded its shoreline, its gnarled trunk and leafy branches bent as if in prayer over the murky water below. Hanging tenaciously from one of the branches was a thick piece of rope, perfect for swinging upon and jumping from. Oh, what fun this evoked. Obedient to the norms of the day, however, this beach was strictly for the boys, and I never really lingered there. Instead, I would meander to a bend in the river nearby that harbored a much more glorious sight to me. It was radiantly sunny there, and the shallow water had a rippling effect as it bubbled over the slippery stones, creating a perfect spot for wading and catching crawfish, and making mud pies too. As I approached the river's edge, the territorial turtles and frogs basking by the shore would slip back into the river, quite indignant over my intrusion. But I never really apologized. I knew I meant no harm and wouldn't be staying too long. There was a beautiful sprawling meadow complete with buttercups, daisies, and Queen Anne's lace surrounding the site, and I truly loved to linger there and revel in the moment. I can still feel the warmth of the summer sun upon me and smell the earth's goodness as I sat down and watched the busy grasshoppers frolic about me. I could even hear the faint sound of an airplane overhead when I would lay back in this golden meadow and gaze up at the fluffy white clouds that seemed to be dancing in the bright blue sky. The gentle droning sounds of bumblebees in summer would soon engulf me, and I was lulled by this tranquil melody into a wonderfully blissful state, knowing deep within that I would always have this blessed, peaceful oasis to remember and cherish, this secret, sacred place that seemed to belong to me and God alone. Happily, I would get up and continue along the path, passing the old slippery elm tree they all loved to climb upon, until I reached the wooden bridge that was nestled by the river's waterfall, its cascading melody faithfully leading me into the Parkway Oval. And I was off to fun and games for another day. But never ever will my heart forget the well-worn but dearly treasured path along the way.
Thank you.
And now Mary Rizzullo, who is also my godmother, is going to be coming up. So I didn't write a whole beautiful essay that was just so gorgeous. I wrote a bunch of notes, and I have a little passage from a book I'd like to read. But I feel like speaking now just makes so much sense because it just follows and dovetails right on Mrs. Pagaroli's beautiful essay, because so many of those memories are my memories and Lainey's. And I'm probably going to cry while I do this because that's how I feel about the Bronx River and the Parkway Oval. So I wrote a little bit called My Front Yard because I grew up on Bronx Street in Tuckahoe. So the Parkway Oval and the river were my front yard. And I was going to ask you all if you believe in magic, because I do, because my childhood was magical. And Lainey was my best friend. She still is my best friend. She's Erin's mother. So she grew up on River Street in the house, obviously, with her mom and family. And I was so lucky because
My siblings and I and Lainey all know the feeling of growing up in Tuckahoe. I grew up in a house that my great-grandfather purchased at the turn of the century. My mother is still living there. And I actually had her here this morning and she spoke, but she's gone home now. And so I was able to look out my bedroom window, and there are photos on the History Society's tri-board there that show the view I had from my bedroom window, which was this beautiful sparkling lake with very little around it, so you could see straight out to the island. And that was such a wonderful feeling to be able to see that every day. And I would go to sleep at night in the summer with my head in my bedroom window to listen to the falls, because I could hear the falls from my bedroom. It was beautiful. So I'd run out my front door every day across the street and into the park. And in the summer we had the counselors as well. So you can see this thread of history that runs through Tuckahoe, and that river runs through Tuckahoe, and it runs through my life. And I feel every time that I visit my mother, I have to go down into that park. I have to stand by the falls on the rock that's still there, the beautiful, soft, beautiful gray rock that is right at the edge of the falls, and watch the water go and the leaves that fall over it, or I used to always worry that the ducks would go over it, the little ducklings, because we'd look for them in the spring. They were these little yellow bobbing, beautiful creatures on the water, and I just couldn't stand when they got too close to the falls. So also, we would go through the seasons. I felt like our life just revolved around that lake. We'd walk around it. We'd go down there in the winter to skate. We'd wait for the flag to be put up by the town, because the ice would freeze and they'd test it to make sure it was safe. And then we'd spend the winter just skating on that beautiful frozen lake out to the island, which was so magical to think we were standing on the shore in the summer looking at that island, and then we were out there. We'd go around in the summer, we'd ride our bikes around the lake, we'd picnic there. In the spring, we also looked for, as I said, the ducklings, and in the fall, we watched the leaves falling into the river and just making this beautiful, serene place where we could go and kind of just be ourselves. We could lie on our backs in the field, in the park, listen to the water. In the summer, the other thing that I know Lainey and I shared, you'll see on that history board again, there's a picture of the old bridge that went over the lake by the falls. They replaced it during our childhood with a newer bridge that had cement kind of stanchions, and we would be barefoot all summer, so we'd run down to the lake and we'd get onto that bridge, which was warm. The wood was warm from the sun, and we'd climb under, holding onto the stanchions, and kind of like be under the bridge. I don't know if you knew we did this. and we'd stick our hands in the water, that shallow, beautiful, rippling water, to catch the crawfish. And just that feeling, it didn't occur to us that this was anything we shouldn't do. And also to put our feet in the water. And through the years, it was ours. It was our lake. So my mother did speak about how overgrown it's become. And it is really hard to see it like that. And I'm so proud of Erin. Where are you? Is she in here? I mean, I don't know where Jeff is, but I agree with your professor. There is so much passion in this one person alone to change our world. And I am so proud of her and proud of all of us here to support her and be part of this. And it goes back to what you said about Gandhi, it just takes a little thing. I mean, I'm watching it just to make a change. And look at the change you're making. So, you know, really, I am so proud of you and so happy to be part of this. I think that's pretty much it. I was, as I said, rambling. I did have a little passage from a book I wanted to share to kind of relate to you how it felt to skate on that lake, because I don't think, if you've never skated on an open lake where it's not in, you know, a rink, but you're out skating, you don't understand that freedom. It's the most delicious sense of freedom. And I don't, oh, here's my book, okay. So this is a great book. I'm a librarian, as is Lainey. This is a great book. It is called 12 Kinds of Ice. It's by Ellen Bryan Obed, and it's about her life growing up in an area where they went skating every winter on different types of ice, ponds and lakes, and she's describing them so beautifully. And so I wanted to just share one little part. So this is called black ice. And this was my favorite type of ice because it was before the snow. Because once it snowed, we had to go out and shovel the ice, and it wasn't quite as smooth and fabulous to skate on. So black ice is water shocked still by the cold before the snow. We could see the clouds, the blue sky, the tree-edged shoreline in the mirror of black ice beneath us. We could see ourselves in the glass, our longed wing spirals, our flashing blades, our new mittens. We skated around the island. We looked beneath the water and saw what we could not see in the summer. We made huge backward circles and listened to the sharp cuts of our blades. We skated out to the middle of the lake. We could hear the ice cracking and groaning as it stretched itself in the cold. We sped to silver speeds at which lungs and legs, clouds and sun, wind and cold raced together. Our blades spit out silver. Our lungs breathed out silver. Our minds burst with the silver while the winter sun danced silver down our bending backs. So that's a little bit of what it was like to grow up in Tuckahoe by the Parkway Oval and to be able to skate on that lake. And I'm really, really pleased to be here and to share this with you, Erin.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was excellent. Another round of applause. So I'm going to put the mic down unless anyone else wants to take it out of my hand. But I'm going to put the music back on and, keep mingling. Thank you.
Every day of my life I can run back to you. You rush back at me with treasures anew. Beauty skims your surface with wild geese and swans. Hawks are overhead, the stilled gray heron. I climb under the bridge where the water lies low, where crayfish and minnows swim to and fro, where red carp shimmer in an afternoon dance, and turtles snap up at a glancing chance. Essence of the waterfall beckons to me, and I answer the call. Seated on that perfect stone boulder, I reach out to hold the elusive water, but she rushes by and I must be content to sit by and marvel at water's descent. And thank you for the river, help carry me through my life. A constant reminder under my window you sang. I fished along your banks in the summer rain. In winter you offered us glee on frozen waters. We would race from one end of the lake to the other. Debt of respect. We cannot deny there has been some neglect. We hope to amend this, and as time ensues, sincerely hope to make it up to you. not only to clear up and change what has been, but prevent it from happening ever again. So thank you, dear river, for holding us tight, for singing to me in the deep of the night, for entrancing my children as you did me. May we all guard you from further harm, so you can rush out with your treasures in the years to come. That's John and his sister Sarah.
Anyone else want to get up here and sing a song?
Okay. This will propose.
Thank you so much, Mom and John. Thank you. Any minute now, the next speaker from the Bronx River Lions should be coming in, and you will not want to miss that.
Anyway, it's a pleasure to be up here, kind of on the more upstream section of the river. And I thought maybe we do like a little quiz, a little Bronx River quiz. What do you think? I have a few prizes to give out. Okay, so who knows where the Bronx River starts? What is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. You can. I think you should raise your hand. Who wants to raise your hand? Yeah?
No, she's just saying
Oh, you're saying goodbye. Oh, I thought you were saying bye. Davis Park, that's right. You get your very own. Pays for when you're canoeing and you need to put your, I don't think it'll quite hold the phone, maybe. Anyway, and who knows where the mouth of the river is? I said it just now, so if you were listening, maybe you would, no? Yeah, Peter?
I don't.
No? Anybody know? Where does the Bronx River empty out into? Soundview Park, that's right. Right. To you. Did you get this? Oh, you don't canoe? Then you get a button. Okay, so that's right. The Bronx River, 23 miles long, starts up at Davis Brook. The headwaters used to be behind what is now the Valhalla Dam, the Tuckahoe Dam. But of course, when they built it, it diverted the headwaters over to Davis Brook. And it goes 23 miles right down through the heart of lower Westchester County, right through the middle of the Bronx, through the Bronx Zoo and the New York Botanical Garden. And then it empties out into the East River right around Soundview Park and Hunts Point. So my next question, who knows what the Bronx River is named after? Who or what? Or oh, everybody knew that one. Great, Jonas Bronx. And who was Jonas Bronx? I mean, now, where was he from originally? Sweden, that's right. We got another drawback sort of thing. Right, so, the story, some of you guys already know the story. The story is Jonas Bronx, he was a Swede. He came and settled in the Bronx back in 16, actually I don't think I know my date off the top of my head, 1600s. He set up a farm on the, I think on the eastern edge of his farm, there was this little creek, became known as Bronx River. And so later on, people were like, where are you going? We're going up to, Bronx River. And then it was like when they became New York City, it became the borough of the Bronx River, and then later just the Bronx. So many people say that's why the Bronx is the only borough that has a "the" in the name. Because it comes from the borough of the Bronx River. It's really all about the river. So we were also down at the mouth of the river this morning. There was 100 volunteers who were pulling out trash along the river in Soundview Park. This might be my last quiz question, but who can guess how many pounds of trash they pulled out of the river? You may want to just guess. More than 500. More than 1,000.
2,000.
2,000 pounds down in Soundview Park, actually. Today, they pulled out of the Bronx River.
Can I get a prize for
Oh, I
that?
didn't even know I had these in here. Look at chocolate.
Sure.
It's not nearly as healthy as your, vegetable seeds. So, give me a few.
Thank
We'll
you so
leave
much.
these here for.
Anybody wants, you get a seed and a piece of chocolate. Free.
So I had this in my car because I was going to do a quiz by the river a couple of weeks ago when we were releasing a certain fish. I lied when I said that was my last question. I have another question. Into the Bronx River. Anybody have a guess what fish it was we were releasing? Not you, Peter? Someone who hasn't guessed yet, Aaron? Yes, it was the alewife fish. What do you need? Do you need a dry bag, probably? It's not really fair that Aaron answer that question because 2 years ago, Aaron spent the whole summer studying the river herring with us, so I'll give that one to you anyway. But yes, so all along the eastern seaboard, back hundreds of years ago, they talked about our rivers running silver in the spring. And they ran silver because these silvery fish, called alewife herring, used to migrate back up to their home rivers to spawn, kind of like what we think about the salmon doing out in the west. And over time, we put dams on our river for mills. And so the fish could no longer come up and access the freshwater stretches of the river, stretches like your stretch of river right here, which is actually where they need to get to spawn and have their babies. So because of that and because of pollution, really we've seen a dramatic decline in the alewife herring over the past couple hundred years. So there's now an effort to bring them back. And that's done by both restocking the populations of fish into the river, and our fish came from Bride Brook in Connecticut. And it's a river that has an abundance of fish, and they bring 300-400 of them down in the springtime. And there are fish that have just returned to that river and are about to spawn. So they release them into the river, they spawn, their babies are imprinted on the Bronx River, and then they swim out to the open ocean a few months later, and then 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years later, they come back to their home rivers. So now, of course, that only works if we've created some kind of passage around the dam. That was the problem to begin with. So that's where Erin spent her summer 2 years ago, was right there at the fish ladder at the southernmost dam on the Bronx River, which if you've ever been to the Bronx Zoo, is right at the southern edge of the Bronx Zoo, where there's a big waterfall. People call it a waterfall, but as our old education coordinator used to say, it's actually an ecological catastrophe because it blocks migrating fish from coming back up to the river. So we've installed a fish ladder. And 2 years ago, when Erin was there, sadly, there weren't any, actually no alewife, I think, made it up that year, and we were a bit concerned. But then last year, we had about 75 alewife make it up. And that was really exciting because what that meant was that there had been a remnant population of those fish all along in the river. We didn't think there were any left, really, but it turns out they were probably spawning at the base of the dam, where it's not really very hospitable for them. The water is kind of brackish, it's kind of turbid, but they're tough Bronx fish, and so they did what they had to do to survive. So we're really hopeful now that we both have fish coming up the ladder, those remnant fish, native fish, mixing with our new Connecticut fish, in sort of New York City style. Yes, so our next dam up is actually in the zoo. It's what we call the Twin Dam. So we're working right now on, we have a design for it, and we have money, and these things cost millions of dollars. You'd be surprised. Yeah, the next dam up from that one is one in the Botanical Garden, which is, and these are all sort of historic dams. So they're sensitive, both in terms of their structural integrity, but also in terms of their historic significance. So we have to do it's a lot of work actually to build them. But that's our intent, is to eventually get those 3 fish ladders in place, so we will have herring coming back up to Tuckahoe. Yeah. Sure, it is not a ladder. Is it? Right, so get that out of your mind. I don't know why we call them that. It's more like a series of ramps up the river. So I didn't bring a picture of one. Aaron, I don't know if you have a picture of one.
It's right here.
Do you? you have one?
So let me just, Aaron is
Okay.
on it.
So I won't be able to explain it very well, but it's basically a series of ramps.
Yeah, Aaron
It's
will,
like 2
Aaron
ramps.
will take you right to the picture.
And they have water rushing down. There's like a flume, kind of, and there's like a resting spot in the middle where the fish, so they swim up, and they rest, and they swim up the rest of the way, and they go over the dam. And they have to be built very specifically with certain amounts of angles, if those things really matter for the fish, and certain volumes of water coming through. Right, so that's it right there. So the dam that Aaron worked on, the southernmost dam, is actually, I would hazard a guess to say it's, if not the oldest structure in the Bronx, one of the oldest structures in the Bronx, because it's a dam that dates back to the 1600s. It was a snuff mill built by the Delancey family. They were actually loyalists to the British. So after the war, the Revolutionary War, they had to leave the Bronx. They couldn't stay. But we still have the remnants of this mill, which was a grist mill for grinding flour. And it's been in place ever since. So we think ever since the 1600s, really, that when that dam was built, it was built at really the lower limit or the upper limit of the tidal section of the river. So, so since the 1600s, there haven't been any, that's when we began to probably see the real decline in fish. So yeah, do you want to explain it, Aaron? Why don't you tell a little bit about your...
So they enter down here, and then I don't have the whole picture here, but they'll move around, and then this that you see here, that's the ascent to that.
Yeah, it looks steeper than it is, actually. It's not very steep.
It's not like this.
Yeah.
And then they...
It's maybe like a 10% incline or something. So you have water coming from above the dam, flowing down into the, into that flume, and then what attracts the fish to come up the ladder is kind of the flow of water and the bubbling of water at the base. So we were worried in that first year when Aaron was there that there were no fish coming up. We were worried that maybe the dam wasn't built properly, that maybe the angles weren't right, or the volume of water wasn't right, or something was happening. And so we were thrilled the following year when there were, 70 plus fish that made it up, because it means that actually, no, there was just, sometimes there's just seasonal variation and people don't know exactly why, but in fact this fish ladder works for our fish. What it does not work for is the American eel, which is another fish that we're bringing back to the Bronx River. And the eels are, they're both, the eels and the herring are both called diadromous fish, which means they spend part of their life cycle in fresh water and part of their life cycle in salt water, and their bodies are adapted to change between those two environments. But the alewife are what's called anadromous fish, which means they're born in fresh water. They go out, swim out to the open ocean and live their adult lives out in the ocean and then come back to the fresh water to spawn, whereas the American eel are the opposite. They're actually born out in the open ocean in the Sargasso Sea. And they come up to freshwater bodies of water to live their lives, their adult lives, and go back out to the ocean to spawn. So anyway, and the eels are a little bit more adaptable than the alewife. They've actually been able to make their way up around the dams because they can crawl on land, which is crazy. But I think what people think happens is like during heavy rainstorms when there's some seeps that go around the dams, those eels are able to kind of wiggle up on land, through the seeps and get around. So if you went out to the river here in Tuckahoe, in fact, you will find eels. There are eels, big ones, that live in the upper river, which is pretty exciting. Yeah. Doing the fish shocking? Yeah, so sometimes they come out and they run electrical current through the water, which stuns the fish and they float up to the surface. They're okay. And they can count them and see what's in the river, and then they eventually, it wears off and they swim away. So anyway, that's one of our big efforts, is to bring back fish and wildlife to the river. We're also very interested in bringing people back to the river too. And I think up here you didn't have the problem of people never left the river, right? This has always been a very beautiful part of the river. But in the Bronx, quite to the contrary, we kind of forgot that there was a river in the Bronx, even though people talk about they grew up in the Bronx River houses, they would live in the Bronx River neighborhood, they drove up the Bronx River Parkway, and they were like, what, there's a Bronx River? There wasn't any more realization, because just really the city had been built up around it. We had cut highways, the Cross Bronx, the Bruckner, the Sheridan, the Bronx River Parkway. We had built industry along the river, and so people couldn't get to the river anymore, and they forgot about it, you know. So there was an effort in the 70s to kind of, it actually was a police captain who worked in the Bronx, lived somewhere up in Westchester, I don't know what town, but he would drive down the Bronx River Parkway to get to work. I think he worked down in Hunts Point, and he became just sort of sickened and appalled by the state of the river in the Bronx. Especially since up here it's always been, you know, pretty lovely. And so he brought together a woman who, I don't know how he met her, but she worked at Fordham, and she was an artist. Her name was Ruth Anderberg, and they founded a group called Bronx River Restoration. And they did kind of the early stages of restoration project. And this was the 70s. This was when Earth Day, the first Earth Day happened, when there was kind of a new awareness about our impact on our planet, and that there was a kind of, you know, new spirit of energy around pitching in for the planet. So they did a lot of important work. They developed a master plan. They founded the Bronx River Art Center. They got a whole generation of young people involved in coming out to the river, pulling out tires. I still meet people, you know, who are my age and older who say, oh yeah, I grew up doing this work on the river. And I think that's really powerful for people when they get to have those experiences at a young age. But anyway, the kind of effort morphed into the Bronx River Alliance in the late 90s. Kind of a new generation of activists came together, particularly interested in environmental justice issues. And there was a kind of new awareness of the fact that low-income people of color, you know, bear the disproportionate burdens of a lot of environmental ills, like air quality, water quality. And so some of our South Bronx advocates really, you know, gained steam around saying, you know, we deserve a beautiful river down here too. And so we're really proud that we've opened up 20 new acres of waterfront parkland in the South Bronx. We've launched dozens of careers in ecological restoration and parkland management. We've cleared out, I think, 100 cars and thousands, tens of thousands of tires, and really every sort of object from the river. We've planted over 100,000 native plants, and we're always pulling invasive plants. I was just talking to Peter about how we were wanting to do more on the river. So, you know, it's really a great river. I think people are really rediscovering it, having fun along it. We run paddling trips all throughout the year. I encourage you guys to check out our website, bronxriver.org. Come on a walk, bike ride, paddle with us. We come up here sometimes and do water quality monitoring and check out what are the sources of pollution, where are the pipes that are problem pipes, and how can we work with local municipalities to stop that pollution. So there's lots of different ways to get involved, and we're always looking for new partners. So if you're interested in, you know, getting more involved in the river, we'd love to talk to you. And Martha is over there. Martha's a wonderful volunteer. Thank you, Martha. You can go talk to her, to me, and we'd be happy to tell you more. The flotilla, our paddling event, is May 19th. You can still form a team and come paddle with us. So if you'd like to do that, it's a fundraising event for us. It helps fund the rest of our paddling season, so we can take Bronxites, local school groups, families out on river adventures. But it's really a wonderful celebration, the kind of kickoff of our paddling season and a celebration of spring. We have music and food and beer. So anyway, I encourage you to check that out and consider if you'd like to join us this year for the flotilla. So thank you, and I'll see you at the river.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation.
Every day of my life I can run back to you. You rush back at me with treasures anew. Beauty skims your surface with wild geese and swans. Hawks are overhead, the stilled gray heron. I climb under the bridge where the water lies low, where crayfish and minnows swim to and fro, where red carp shimmer in an afternoon dance, and turtles snap up at a glancing chance. Iridescence of the waterfall beckons to me, and I answer the call. seated on that perfect stone boulder. I reach out to hold the elusive water, but she rushes by and I must be content to sit by and marvel at water's descent. And thank you for the river, help carry me through my life. A constant reminder under my window you sang. I fished along your banks in the summer rain. In winter you offered us glee on frozen waters. We would race from one end of the lake to the other. A debt of respect. We cannot deny there has been some neglect. We hope to amend this, and as time ensues, sincerely hope to make it up to you. Not only to clear up and change what has been, but prevent it from happening ever again. So thank you, dear river, for holding us tight, for singing to me in the deep of the night, for entrancing my children as you did me. May we all guard you from further harm, so you